Hello everyone. Today I would like to present my final project, an interactive experience called Domovyk. This project was created in response to a brief from Site Studio, and its main theme is the exploring cultural identity through interactive media. The result is a small exploration-based game developed in Unreal Engine 5. In this game, the player takes on the role of a Domovyk, a house spirit from Ukrainian folklore, and explores an old house while completing small quests. But before I show the game itself, I would like to explain how I arrived at this idea. My research is based on three key theoretical ideas. First, the theory of sociologist Stuart Hall, who describes identity not as a fixed fact, but as an ongoing process of becoming. Second, I use the concept of procedural rhetoric by Ian Bogost, an American game studies theorist and designer. This is the idea that games persuade players not through words, but through actions and systems. And finally, I relied on the concept of sites of memory by Pierre Nora, a French historian, which suggests that physical objects become cultural archives when living traditions are lost. These three ideas became the foundation of my project. They helped me understand that I wanted to create a game where the player learns about culture not through explanation, but through interaction with the environment. To understand how this works in practice, I analyzed several games. One important reference for me was What Remains of Edith Finch. In this game, the story is told through the environment. Empty rooms and personal objects create a much stronger emotional response than long texts. Another strong example is Never Alone, where folklore is directly integrated into the gameplay mechanics. On the other hand, I also looked at games such as Uncharted and Assassin's Creed. In these games, ancient cultures are often used only as visual decoration, and heritage becomes a form of collectible loot. For my project, this approach was not acceptable. I needed culture to carry emotional weight. When choosing a cultural context, I had three options. The first was to use something widely known and easily understood by the audience. The second was to deeply research a less familiar culture and build a project based on rare material. And the third option was to use a culture I personally belong to. I consciously chose the Ukrainian cultural context. This is not only my personal background, but also a very rich source of intangible heritage. Ukrainian culture has often been preserved not through official institutions, but through the home, family traditions, and everyday symbols. For Site Studio, this provides an opportunity to present an authentic and less commonly explored world, where mysticism is closely connected with everyday life. At the concept stage, I developed three ideas. The first was Mavka, an atmospheric horror experience set in a night forest, where the player searches for traces of a forest spirit. It was visually interesting, but required complex environments and heavy scene production, which was too ambitious for a solo project. The second idea was The Road Through the Forest, a story about a Ukrainian Cossack warrior who gets lost and makes a deal with the devil, facing moral challenges. This was an interesting concept, but it focused more on moral choice systems, which did not fully match the spirit of the brief. The third idea was Domovyk, a story set during one night in an old house. A family is preparing to leave, and a small house spirit must collect the most important items, traditional talisman dolls. This concept best matched the brief, a calm, exploratory experience focused on atmosphere and emotional presence. At the same time, I realistically evaluated my skills and understood that this was the project I could complete to a high standard within the given timeframe. In the game, the player takes on the role of a small house spirit during the night before a family permanently leaves their home. The main mechanic is collecting 3 protective talismans. Each object unlocks a flashback, a memory of how it was created, and the player must gather the required items to recreate it. The theme of moving and preserving memory is something many people can relate to. The main character is not a hero or warrior, but a small, slightly grumpy yet caring spirit. Each talisman represents something important: family, health, or prosperity. The game is not designed to scare the player. Instead, it creates a feeling of light nostalgia and care. The development followed a clear plan, although there were some challenges. I started by modeling the Domovyk in Blender and adapting it to the Unreal Engine 5 skeleton. One interesting challenge was adjusting the camera and movement speed to create the physical feeling of being a small creature in a large world. The house was first built as a blockout to test navigation and later filled with detailed and culturally appropriate assets. A new system for me was the quest manager. Instead of placing logic inside each object, I created a central system that manages all quests, while objects simply send events. This made the project much more flexible. Another complex part was the flashback system. When interacting with an object, the player transitions into a memory. The environment changes, boxes disappear, and the lighting becomes daytime. Technically, this required managing visibility, collisions, and lighting at the same time. I solved this using blueprints and dynamic level changes. I also implemented full localization using Unreal Engine tools, so the game supports both Ukrainian and English. Instead of traditional UI prompts, I used the character's internal monologue, which made the experience feel more natural and immersive. Now I would like to show a short gameplay demo of one quest. The game also includes an intro and a final cutscene. The intro shows a ritual of inviting the house spirit into a new home, and in the ending, at sunrise, the owner returns and takes the boot with the spirit inside. Looking back, I can say that this project gave me a valuable experience. It took me 8 weeks to complete. From a technical perspective, I learned how to build flexible quest systems and manage changes in level states. I also used the Unreal Engine localization tools for the first time, which allowed me to translate the game without duplicating logic. However, the main challenges were creative decisions. Initially, I planned to include cutscenes with full 3D human characters, but I quickly realized that poor or unnatural animation would damage the atmosphere. Instead, I used darkness and sound, footsteps, door creaks, and voices. This worked much better, as it allowed the player to imagine the scene themselves, making the experience more emotional. Most importantly, this project taught me professional discipline. I set clear boundaries, worked within a defined plan, and treated it like a real studio environment. When problems appeared, I solved them within the concept, rather than changing the concept to make things easier. If I were to continue developing the project, I would improve the movement system by adding climbing mechanics, allowing the player to explore furniture. I would also add collectible cultural objects to further develop the character. And finally, I would add a cat. In folklore, cats are the only ones who can see house spirits. In some versions, the Domovyk can even transform into a cat. This could add both atmosphere and light humor to the experience. I started this project with one clear goal: to create a small game that honestly and atmospherically presents the idea of cultural memory through gameplay. Looking back, I can say that this goal has been achieved. The game works from start to finish, all 3 quests are implemented, and the atmosphere is conveyed through lighting, sound, and environmental details rather than direct explanation. Domovyk as a project is complete. But as an idea, it is still alive and has potential for further development. I hope this project encourages players to reflect on their own cultural heritage. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.